Hello and welcome to episode 29 of the DX Mentor, all about the upcoming DXpedition to the Juan Fernandez group under the call sign of CB0ZA. Thank you for joining us. I'm Bill, AJB, the DX Mentor. In this episode, we will attend a detailed discussion on a DXpedition to the Juan Fernandez group of islands, which are known as CE0Z. The specific island in question is Robinson Crusoe, and their call will be CB0ZA. My guests are Mike, AD5A, and Joe, WAGEX. And both these guys are veterans of many DXpeditions, so this will be very informative, I'm sure. As you may know, I was at the Orlando Hamcation last week presenting on Working DX. I'd not been able to stay up in emails until this past weekend. There were several nice emails to go through. One was from Greg, N6ZUE, and Roger, W5AL. Both had great comments about episode 26 on the CW Ops organization and all of the great work that Rob, K6RB, and his group does. Thanks to Greg and Roger for the great emails. I always appreciate that. Harry, W1HMM, had a couple of questions after listening to episode 28 on the DX Marathon. He also sent along a show suggestion, and fortunately, we have one in the works this summer that will match his exact show suggestion. So that's always a great fit. I love to hear that. Thanks, Harry, for the great email and the support and the suggestions. Finally, I received an email from Aaron, N6ACA, after working him on 15 meters. And frankly, I got his QSL card today, so it's kind of cool. He's a listener, I've worked him, and I got his QSL card. Thanks, Aaron, for the QSO and the comments. And good luck to you, my friend, in your chase. Now, let's tune into our gurus and find out what they're discussing. Well, good evening. I'm Bill, AJB, the DX Mentor, and welcome to our podcast. Tonight, I'm really excited to talk to Mike, AD5A. Mike's about to depart on a DXpedition, and I'm hoping, and I'm going to say this in front of everyone, that I can catch him when they come back, and then we'll find out how it went. So that's my goal tonight, but I'm going to let you fill in the details, but I'm excited. And Mike is an experienced DXpeditioner, and we're going to learn a lot tonight. So. But let's start it off with Joe, WAGEX. He's with us tonight. How you doing, Joe?
Well, I'm doing fine, Mike and Bill. Thanks for the invite. It's always a pleasure to have guys like Mike aboard with us and find out what they're doing, where they're going next, and let's get started, Mike.
So,
I'm
Mike,
ready.
Tell us about yourself, Mike. How'd you get into this wacky hobby, and then especially not just working DX, but being DX?
Well, it goes back to my teen years when I got into shortwave listening. Unlike many who did, there were no hams, there were no Elmers in my neighborhood, and so it was enthralled with DXing and being able to hear Radio Peking and Radio Moscow and the BBC and Radio Australia in my bedroom with basically a whip antenna. And I just thought it was magic. And I did it, up until, like we say in Boy Scouts, fumes, gasoline and perfume. And so I started then to drift away from it. Well, fast forward about 15 years, and my son was 12, and I came across some old QSL cards from my shortwave listening days. And I sat him down and I went through those. And I said, look here, I could hear this country, that country. I think I had 30 or so cards. He was fascinated and said, hey, Dad, can we listen to some of those still? So I went out, bought a little shortwave receiver, and we sat down in a few evenings and started listening to some DX stations and had a great time. And about that time, I was walking through a Radio Shack and saw W5YI's course. It said novices now have voice privileges. And, you no longer have the conditional license. And I thought, wow, lots have changed since when I was thinking about it. So I bought the course and took it home. So the first night I plugged in the code tapes. And Michael, who's now AB5EB, was 12, came in and said, Dad, do you mind if I listen to those code tapes? And I said, be great. I thought it might last a day or two. Well, 4 weeks later, we got our license on the same day.
No kidding.
Yeah.
Yeah. We got our novice ticket on the same day. I was KB5ILS. He was KB5ILT. And we buried ourselves in the hobby, basically. He was my packet cluster. We had a Drake TR7, and he would come home from school and just tune that band up and down, and find all the DX. Of course, everything was DX to us at the time. And long story short, we just grew in the hobby together. He's still AB5EB. When we upgraded to extra, I was AB5EA, and I did a lot of expeditioning under that call, and then got a vanity call in '96, and he elected to stay with his call. So that's how I got into the hobby. Now I've been active ever since, and DXing was my first love. It took me 16 years to get #1 honor roll, and I just was focused on it, and something I enjoyed. You know, I do a lot of the challenge things now. I'm up to just over 2,900. Don't know if I'll ever make 3,000, but DXing was my first love. So in 1994, I went to, we were living in Houston. I went to a Hamfest, and I forget Dave's call. I think it was WQ5P, Dave Paperman. And Dave gave a presentation on IOTA. And they had the coolest certificate for 100 islands, very colorful. It was just, and I said, I need one of those. I need to start chasing this IOTA stuff. So I did, learned a little bit about it, and found out that Galveston Island, just south of us, counted. So I got a bumper mount mobile antenna and headed off down to Galveston and got on the IOTA frequency, started calling CQ. We immediately had a pileup of Italians on 20 meters. And we were just amazed. We had never thought about being DX. And all of a sudden, we had a pile of guys wanting to work us. And that's where it started. You know, we did a lot we learned a lot. You know, from a mentorship perspective, a lot of my hesitation to get into expeditioning was I wanted to go with someone who knew what they were doing. And that's not a bad idea. But if you don't have anyone, go. Just find a spot you want to go to and start planning it. And, you know, you'll come across hurdles, and you just go. And, you know, start small. Don't try to do anything fancy. You're going to make mistakes. That's how you learn. I once did an expedition in Alaska, an IOTA expedition. Got on the antenna, got on the station, put my R5 up, my R5 vertical, and the little black box had burned up from my last expedition, unbeknownst to us. I didn't take any extra wire to make a dipole with. I just had the one antenna, and everything was based on that. So you learn those things the hard way along the way. And but anyway, that started, and then the projects got bigger and bigger and bigger. We eventually did a brand new one in Nicaragua. We did a couple in Nicaragua. I've been to Australia. We did VK9 AR, which is a 2.5-day sail out of Broome. It's the only VK9 that's not a DXCC country. It's actually closer to Indonesia than to Australia, but that was a fun one. We did. We've done some up in Labrador, up in Canada, all along the Gulf Coast, Texas. I've probably done somewhere in the ballpark of 20 of those. And along the way, when we did the new one in Nicaragua, you know, I was prepared, and always prepared to pay for the entire expedition myself. But being from the business world, I thought, well, someone may want to donate some stuff and advertise. This was going to be a new island, get lots of publicity, relatively speaking, lots of publicity. And so I put some feelers out. Hey, we're going to do this island. Would you be, you know, what can you help us with? Any piece of equipment? Well, the net of it was the Oklahoma Comm Center gave us a dipole, and Yesu gave us a 25% off coupon. And that was all we could muster. So coming back from that expedition, we thought, we can complain about this or be part of the solution. That's when we formed IREF, the Island Radio Expedition Foundation. Made it 501c3 and funded exclusively IOTA only expeditions. Or they had to be rare enough on the IOTA list to qualify. Ironically, it's not surprising if you think about it. Most DXCC countries, however rare they may be, aren't rare in IOTA because most of the IOTA chasers have already been through DXCC. They've gone to IOTA as a second life, if you will, to work things. So when I went to Galveston Island, it was actually more rare than heard of, if you can believe that, or from an IOTA perspective.
Sure.
Yes.
So we did that, for 24 years. And the thing when we did the DXpeditioner of the Year award, that you guys were so, we thank you for allowing us to give that out a couple times at the DX dinner to highlight IOTA expeditioning. It's a different brand of expeditioning. I call the big ones corporate expeditions. In a corporate expedition, one guy's handling this, one guy's handling that. Somebody's getting permission, somebody's doing logistics, somebody's doing the band operating plan. And so you divide and conquer on these big ones. When you do IOTA, you pretty much do the whole thing yourself. You get permission, you do the logistics, you carry all your equipment, you deploy, you find the boat, you do all those things pretty much by yourself or one or two others. And it can be very challenging. So we wanted to highlight that genre, if you will, of expeditioning. And I think while we were able to give the award out, we did that. But, COVID came, all sorts of other things cut back on that activity, and funding models have changed, with OQRS, the kind of grants we could give, and our grants were not huge. We were giving between $500 and $1,000. They can raise that in OQRS pretty quickly, rather than have to go through our qualification and follow our rules and QSL by the Bureau and all that kind of stuff. And so the requests became fewer and fewer.
Mm-hmm.
And we just decided probably at best to close it down. So we did that about 3 months ago. But that's a long answer to a short question.
But it's a good. So of all the places you've been, where would you like to go back, and where would you never go back?
The most interesting place and the most fun I had was VK9 Atoll. That's probably as close to DXCC as you can get. A 2.5 day sail. It's an uninhabited island. The way that we got permission was VK5CE. Craig, I think Edwards is his last name. Craig was able to get a permit going along with government biologists who are going to do some bird counts, check on nesting. They've had problem there with fire ants, make sure the fire ants hadn't come. They're going to do a bunch of work around that. And so he got permission for 3 of us, for 3 operators, to accompany those biologists. And so it was a pretty special island to get permission to operate from. And the way that it worked and the way we were able to operate there, of course, you have JAs just in your backyard. And I think in 2.5 days of operating, we made over 8,000 Qs. And that's with just verticals on the beach. But that one was fun because it was all-in adventure. It was a 9-day trip. A lot of IOTA expeditions are a long weekend. Mm-hmm. But this was kind of an all-in, type of operation. Now, where would I not go back to? The most miserable ones, believe it or not, are the ones in the Gulf, off the Gulf Coast of Texas, Louisiana. They're usually little barrier islands and they're uninhabited, but they're just covered in mosquitoes. And, it's just, it can just be very miserable. So I would say any of those Now, would I go back? Yes. Would I want to go? Would I want to go back? Nah. Well, probably not. But it makes for a good story when you come back.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Mike,
Joe-
did the fire ants bother you at VK6?
No, there were none.
Oh,
They had problems with Indonesian fishermen staying on that island and bringing food and different things, and I guess the fire ants kind of became an epidemic down there, and it affected the nests and hatching and all that stuff of all the birds that go there. So there's a warship off of that island 365 days a year to keep non-permitted people from landing there.
hmm.
And so this was sort of an annual checkup, if you will, of that island and the shape of the bird nests and the population and all that. And so I think they go out there once a year.
Okay.
And we were able to tag along.
Wow. So Joe, we've talked about some of your favorite ones before, but which place would you not, excuse me, want to go?
Without a doubt, it would be Swains Island. That was tough. That was absolutely miserable. Yeah.
Because of the heat or because?
Well, the last crew that went through there, and I talked to one of those operators, and they complained about the mosquitoes, but the heat is what really got us more than the mosquitoes. It is just miserably hot down there, and as you well know, Mike, you always have to put the antennas up out on the beach, so you're out in the hot sun for 2 or 3 days, whatever the case may be. Then you got to take them all down again, and boy, that heat was just absolutely miserable out there.
You pointed out something I never thought about. It's like you can be on the beach and you can have all the water you want, but the water is like, 95 degrees because it's in the same heat you are. You can't take it out of the fridge. So
No.
it's really not, I guess it's no relief. It's just hydration, really.
Yes.
Wow. So how did you end up with this group going to Robinson Crusoe or Juan Fernandez, if you will?
Well, my son, AB5EB, has had a long-running relationship with Marco, who was leading this expedition, and they had planned some IOTAs. And they had never really, and none of the plans came to fruition. And then when Michael went to Bouvet, I think Marco thought, hey, he's got some good experience and he can add some value to the planning, and maybe we go do something bigger. And so the original plan was try to go to San Felix, but that's much harder to get on. And so Juan Fernandez became the choice. And so I wasn't on the original route. And then a couple of the Chileans, actually, I think a couple of Chileans dropped out, create an opening, and he asked me if I wanted to go. And answer, of course, I wanted to go. It's kind of and he knew it was a dumb question, but he asked it anyway. And so, and then, you mentioned in the notes, Marco passed away very unexpectedly. He had a heart attack. He wasn't that old of a guy. I think he was in his 50s. And to be honest, we weren't certain that the expedition would go on. But some resolved people wanted to honor Marco by continuing with the work he had done, which was difficult. He had all the relationships. He had gotten the permissions. He had made the arrangements on the island. He had done all of that and really done it himself. And we, as an expedition team, really didn't get too involved in it. So the guys in Chile, in Otis, NP3, I'm going to get in trouble not knowing his call, NP3G, I think Otis also went to Bouvet. They picked up the ball and ran with it, and we filled in all the blanks, and now have gotten our cargo there. We've gotten permissions, and we've got the call signs, and so everything is ready to go. We're just waiting on February 7th to catch our plane.
Yeah, so the dates I'm showing here are February 13th to the 20th.
But I think we'll actually, those are maybe a little old. We're going to try to be on February 10th,
Okay.
and we may operate at least through the 23rd.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. And we're going to do, I don't think we've announced this to the public yet, but it's not going to hurt anything. We're going to do the ARRL DX contest. We're going to do a multi-single from down there.
Okay.
We'll still use the other stations to operate WARC and sideband and FT8, those kinds of things. But we will do a contest, and we've got a secret weapon. We have N2IC on our team, who is a world-class contester. So anyway, we're looking forward to that.
I think this is the group. Joe and I sat through a meeting with Greg Marco about being remote operators. So I'm looking forward to that. I've never done that. I think it'll be a lot of fun. And actually just being part of hearing all this stuff is kind of cool. So we're excited about that. Yeah, I did mention the team leader. And I think what it does is it really underscores this isn't, you guys just aren't going to a park somewhere and setting up. I mean, every time you put a group like this together on a boat, on a plane, you know, you're taking some amount of risk. And I always say this, but like, you know, I'm sitting at home, and if I can't get you on 30 meters, I, you know, slap my fist on the table and dang, I'll try to give them tomorrow night. But then if I get you, now I go off looking for somebody else. But you guys got to take time to get there. You got to stay there. Then you got to get back. You got to equipment set up, equipment. I know, talking to Joe, it's got to be exhausting, right?
Well, it is. And as Joe will know, there's so much planning and discussion among any DXpedition team to pull together a cohesive plan. We all have our favorite things to do. If it were up to me, I would probably want to operate 12 hours a day on nothing but the CW, and let me get 3 or 4 hours nap, and I want to come back. I don't really want to operate phone or FT8, and I just want to do my thing. Well, you've got to put those things aside when you go on a DXpedition. I mean, you've got to fill a role, and that role may include other modes that you may not be that great at or enjoy that much, but the expedition goals come first, you know, not your personal favorites. If we did that, it'd be hard to put a team together.
Yeah.
So you have to find a team that has some flexibility in their capabilities and willingness to adapt.
Wow. I know, Joe, which one was it that you were on where everybody was just, it was like the top 15 people that applied, that was the team. So you didn't get to pick them ahead of time. You didn't get to.
Oh, that was on Midway. So when we went to Midway, way back when, the Fish and Wildlife, they picked us, and the 14 of us made the team. It was not our team that we're accustomed to, Mike, where we all take our buddies and people that we're familiar with, and the local doctor and so forth. But on Midway, we filled out an application, sent it in to them, and then they picked us. So
Wow.
yeah. And as it worked out absolutely beautiful. But at the time, we didn't think it would be.
I can't imagine that you're in a confined space and you can't go anywhere, and you got one or two people that you kind of can't stand, or they get under your skin. That's a major challenge. And man, oh man. So
the other thing I didn't mention, and Joe mentioned doctor, my son is an ER physician. And so he was the doctor on the Bouvet expedition as well. So I'll have my own personal doctor on this.
That'd be nice.
Who did we, was it Don Greenbaum that we talked to a month or two ago, and he wouldn't think about going on a DXpedition now without a doctor.
No.
You're really asking for trouble. So did you know, I know you were invited, but did you know most of the team, or that you're going with, or some of them, or?
I knew Otis I met him a few years ago in Dayton. And then when he and Michael were on the Bouvet team, we'd go to Dayton, they'd kind of hang out together. And And so I got to know him a little bit. N2IC, who I've known him, I was in WRTC this past year, and Steve London, N2IC, was there, and he's a very good contester. I didn't get into contesting much until after I retired, but I've sort of migrated to doing some of that. But those two guys, but other than that, no. But I've met some guys on this team that are extremely capable. And I've never known them before, but I guarantee you, if I were to pick a team, they'd be on my team. We're only 7 guys, so we're gonna be spread pretty thin, and we've got 2 stations to run now. We have the Rib, that's going to be like our 3rd station, running primarily FT8. So we'll have effectively 3 signals on the air at any given time.
Okay. 2 of Joe and I favorite guys, Hal, W88C, Hal Turley, and Greg Marco, W6IZT. I know they're associated with this, and they're just tremendous guys. So
yeah, they are. I got to meet Hal. We did a run through down in Melbourne, Florida, to set up and test all of our equipment, make sure everything worked, and our networking and all that stuff. And I met Hal there. Now Hal has trouble. He lives in West Virginia, in the little airport there. He has trouble getting out on time. He was 2 days late.
Really? I wish we'd have known that.
yeah, well, they had to move the orange barrels and keep the trucks from going across the runway. So
yeah. So anyway, he did make it. And we got to hang out and have a good time. Had a nice dinner and a couple beers. So, and I'm looking forward to hanging out with him more at the expedition.
yeah, I'm envious. He's a heck of a nice guy. So in your mind, how if we get together and let's say a year from now, if you look back on this DXpedition, how do you feel what criteria will you use to determine it was a success?
Well, we actually had some discussion in our team about that today. What are measures of success? And I think from a DXpedition goal perspective, you want to fill as many band mode slots as you can for your audience. And that's how I look at it. I don't know if you've ever read any of Marty Lane's books about expeditioning, but that's how he taught me. This is your audience. And, his other advice is be loud.
Yeah.
You can't run a pile up, with a QRP signal. So I would say, to the extent that we could make guys happy who need us. You can always read your reviews by just looking at comments on the reflectors. Joe knows this. You come back, it's one of the things I always do. I come back and look up the spots. What do they say? And we're going to have a pilot. And so we'll have some real-time feedback on how we're doing. Are we in the right places at the right time? Are we leaving bands too early? Are we staying bands too long? And we'll adjust on the fly. The other thing is number of uniques. So in the contesting world, if I hear a little peanut whistle station, I just keep calling CQ. I don't have time to try to dig them out. I can work 2 or 3 people by the time I pull them out. But on a DXpedition, just the opposite is true. You dig those guys out. In a contest, I'm just Texas. I'm not anything important to anybody. But, on an expedition, you're meaningful to that station on the other end. And I think you've got to take special effort to get those guys in the log. The guys with the dipole up 15 feet, that when they work you, you're gonna make their day. And so I would say the number of uniques. We need to have a reasonable number of uniques. And then, of course, that we get there and back safely.
Sure.
I think that is a good measure, but I think the performance is be where you're supposed to be. Work as many guys as you possibly can. Don't work the same 1,000 guys on 9 bands. Pay attention to the little guys, and when you come back, you're going to make people mad. But if the majority of the comments are positive, I think you have to call that a win.
Okay, so let's flip the script now. I'm the guy with 100 watts and a dipole or a vertical in the side yard. what do I have to do to increase my odds of being heard?
Well, I think early on, and I think we've all gone through this stage in our DX career, is, you're probably, you may or may not work us on the first day, but don't lose heart. I mean, I like to dabble in QRP. By the way, there's not much about ham radio I don't like. So I like to dabble in QRP, and I would always wait until the last 2 or 3 days of an expedition when they're calling CQ, and you can almost always work them QRP.
Yeah.
And so hang in there, stay on the fringes. If you're a little guy, I will tune up. If I'm working a pile up, I will go up a little further up to see who is smart enough to be outside of the masses, and I'll work that guy, and usually another one or two before everybody finds it. Okay, then I go back, start over, work the big guys, but I'm always looking on the fringes to see if I can pick up that weak signal. So don't be afraid to use that tactic, because experienced expeditioners will look for you there, because you get up on the edge, you're easy to work. You don't have to get repeats. You can get the whole sign, call sign. So that's some of the things I would say. And if we're not, if the expedition is not in the right place at the right time, we'll have a pilot send a note to the pilot, say, hey, I can hear you at this time. Listen a little longer, and I think we will adjust to that.
Well, okay, that's great. Yeah, I know for years I had a rig in the car. So when you have it in the car and you've got 100 watts, you're limited. But what I think I became a better operator because I would hear how much the other stations don't listen. So
right.
if he says up 10 and everybody keeps calling up 5, it's easy to work him. So
yeah.
So I think what you're saying is 100% right. If you got to listen and follow directions, and you actually can get them in the log.
Well, some things I'll do, and I actually enjoy doing this a lot, is to do just that. It's like they're not listening to me. So maybe they're all up 3, and I'll say up 5 and see who goes to 5. And I'll be waiting on them. And when they get there, I'll work them. And then, I'll go back and work up 1 to 5 and then up 2. If they're all up high, I'll just say up 2. And the people who can hear me and copy code will go up 2.
Yeah.
And so I do that to reward the guys who are paying attention.
Wow, good for you. Joe, were you going to ask a question?
No,
it's okay. I thought I saw you do that. So I'll have everything in the show notes, but how can we contribute? Right? How can we, send some money your way? $10, $15, whatever.
CB0ZA.com. Charlie Bravo 0 Zulu Alpha.com, and there's our website, and there's a donate button there. And when Marco passed away, all of the website passwords, all of his email passwords went with him. And so we went an extended period of time without the website up. And I think we probably missed out on a few contributions. We also went from a team of 10 to a team of 7. Now, there are some variable costs, obviously, plane tickets, hotel rooms, things like that we don't pay. But, there's a fixed cost that doesn't change, and then you have fewer contributors. So, and I would say, if you don't want to give up front, make us earn it. And if we give you a band country, if we give you something that you didn't have, think about helping us out. And if we don't do that, well, then don't support us. So, and it doesn't matter if it's $1, $2, $5. A lot of times, and my wife says this all the time, but I'm going to repeat it. It's the thought that counts. You took the time to go and help us out a little bit. Now, we're not a huge budget expedition, but we're still in the $20,000 range. So, that's where we are.
Yeah, it all helps.
But yeah, but that's how you can do it. Go to the website and there's a donate button.
So with the sunspots as they've been, things aren't going to cool off, anytime soon. Do you see a trip after this one?
Yeah.
Okay.
Where's it
I
gonna
can't
be,
tell-
Michael?
I can't tell you.
Yeah, I could tell.
Stay tuned to the next podcast.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you, will you be making a DXpedition in Dayton for the for Hamvention?
I'll make it. I'll be coming to Dayton. I won't do one between Juan Fernandez and then.
Right.
Yeah, I'll be in Dayton. That's since I've retired, that's getting to be one of my favorite things, ham radio things to do. Yeah, I'm also an FOC, and a bunch of the guys go there to meet. I see island guys. I also now, I've done over 550 summit activations.
Wow.
Gee.
And in fact, I'm going, leaving in the morning to do a trip through eastern Oklahoma and Arkansas. Originally, I couldn't do tonight because I was going to be gone. Well, I think the high temperature up there today was like 15.
Yeah.
So I decided to wait a day. But
Mike, I've got a good question for our listeners. What type of food will you guys have on the island?
well, we're working through that. And it's so the main thing you get on Juan Fernandez is seafood. And I mean, it's I think it's 400 miles west of the mainland, and seafood is their primary food. And there's always chicken and that kind of thing. We have a couple guys on the team that can't stand seafood, so I think we're going to have some discussions. Now, I have a lot of hobbies. One of my other hobbies is backpacking, and so I've always opted for freeze-dried stuff.
Mhm.
All you got to do is boil water, and you boil water. You don't have to carry canned foods. You don't have to carry anything heavy, and that can sustain you. But we still have to work out our menu because the town is down below, and we'll have a hotel room there. We have a hike up the hill where the station is, where we will probably stay a day or two at a time for a shift and then come back down.
Oh, okay.
We have to figure out and take a break. We have to figure out what food we're going to take up the hill, because they don't have many non-perishable foods on the island. So we're still working out that detail, and probably some local guys, and we have 2 guys in Chile that are been invaluable with logistics that will help us figure that out.
Sure.
So if we can deviate just for a second, talk to me about summits on the air, because that's something that it's just always been there, and I'm not sure if I'm interested in doing or not. And I've had people tell me, if you do one, you'll have a good time and you will do more. And that may be what's keeping me from doing it, because I got too many other things to do right now. But so you must get a kick out of that.
You want me to show you my rig?
Yeah.
Sure.
And by the way, Joe does consider QRP about 500 watts. So
he and my son.
Okay.
My son has no use for QRP.
No.
So this is my station.
No kidding. A mountain
5 watts. It's 5 bands. This is my key.
Sure.
I use a little LiPo battery. And so my tower, that's my shack. This is my tower. It's a carbon fiber pole. Fits in a pack and that. And it extends out, goes up to about 18 feet.
Holy cow.
I just prop it up in a tree, and I have a homebrew trapped infed half wave. See this? You see the little traps on it?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, so it's 40 through 17. I run it up the pole and down in kind of an inverted L, and I have a 49-to-1 balun little QRP ballon at the bottom of it, feed it to the radio. And, you'll have a pile up for 5-10 minutes. And, I usually will stay on a summit, maybe 30. Now, some guys will go stay all day. I'm doing multiple summits on this next run. So I usually stay 30 minutes or so. I'll work 40, 30, 20, 17. And I may go back to the band I started on. And it's a big time. Hiking, backpacking has always been a hobby of mine. And when I found out I could play radio at the same time, it was just too much for me to stand, and have a lot of fun doing it. Now, I also have a KX2, which is luxury on a summit. You've got a tuner. It's got a great little receiver in it. That's also a good radio. But yeah, don't do it or you will. Because it's just good fun. And it's a mini expedition. I rarely stay overnight, but I'll plan my hike. I'll get up to the top, set up. I'll be set up and operating in less than 5 minutes. And Summits on the Air has a very cool spotting system. So most of us are QRP because the radios are light. So it ties into RBN. So I put a notice out. I'm going to be on the air between this time, and tell them what summit I'm going to be on. So then when my signal hits the RBN, then the SOTA site picks it up and posts me on the SOTA cluster.
Oh.
And so I'm self-spotted. I don't have to worry about being spotted. Now on phone, I don't know who wants to do QRP phone, but there are a few, I guess.
Yeah.
They have to spot themselves, but it's a good time. And the award is it's the reason I'm doing this one now. Oklahoma and Arkansas have a bunch of easy summits. I have a second home in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and there we do some pretty serious ones, from 7,000 feet up to 12,500 or so.
Wow.
The ones in Oklahoma are a lot smaller, but I'm getting close to 5,000 points, and I want to get that done before I do the Chile thing. I'll be gone most of the month of February, so I'm not going to get to do much then. So I'm gonna make a run about 3 days up there.
So Mike, to stay on a summit longer than what you normally do, it's just not effective.
Well, it is. It just depends on what your goals are. In New Mexico, in the winter, it's too freaking cold to stay up there very long. So you want to get up there, get it done, and while you're hiking and moving, you're warm. But when we're out in the open air, so you can get chilly. The other thing in the summer in New Mexico is you have monsoon season, and so you've got thunderstorms at the higher elevation. So you want to be off the summit. You want to be down below it by noon, before those thunderstorms kick up. So now, guys back east, and there's a lot of these summits are drive-ups. You don't have to hike. Now, your station can't be connected to your car at all, but you can drive up to the top of qualifying summit, get on a park bench, and operate all afternoon. And some guys do that and enjoy doing that. The other thing they do, there's a part of the award that's called Summit to Summit, where if you're on a summit and you work another summit, that counts towards an award.
Oh.
So they'll set up there all day and work other summits as they come up. So the other cool thing about it, there's no QSLing. You upload your logs, both the activator and the chaser, and you're done. There's no, it's all the honor system, no cards involved. It's all automated. They track your awards. It's all automated. It's really a joy for me as part of the hobby.
Do you upload those to the Summit website or to LOTW?
To the Summits on the Air website.
Okay, and then that
they have their own. Yeah, they have their own database and track all the awards and all that. Now I do upload them to LOTW separately, but yeah, for them to track it, you got to load it up to their database.
Okay, so this may seem like a silly question, but are there POTAs that are also SOTAs?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, there are. you know, if they're in a state park, if the summit's in a state park or national park, and there are many of those, you can double up. I've been on some of those. Now, I need to, admittedly, catch on to some of this POTA stuff because it's getting huge. I should post on their site when I'm doing one of those, and I'd have probably 3 or 4 times as many callers, and I'll warm up to that one of these days to start doing it. But absolutely, you can have 2 for 1.
Okay. I think kind of what you alluded to, whether it's FT8 or it's summits or POTA, anything that keeps people active and on the air is a good thing for us.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%.
Yeah.
So Joe, what did I miss?
Well, I don't know. I went down through the list. I think you've covered it.
All right.
Yeah.
Mike, anything you want to add, or something you wanted to mention that we didn't talk about, or?
Well, I want to thank you guys for having me, and thank you guys for doing this. I mean, I think there's so many different media today that we can take advantage of to learn. And I know that, you know, my career always sort of kept me busy. I wasn't much of a home repair guy, but now I can go out on YouTube and fix most anything. And I think guys learning the ham radio hobby can shorten their learning curve compared to our day when we had to kind of, you know, write letters and read books, and you can go to club meetings. Now you can go to podcasts like this one and learn. And so thank you guys for doing it. And thank you for having me.
Well, you're welcome. And boy, you fit this in. I mean, you're headed out in a few weeks and you've got your other activities, and you got us in the middle. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Joe and I'll be at the DX dinner at obviously at Hamvention, and also the DX forum. So if you are able to get there, make sure you grab me. And I'm hard to miss. 6'9", about 340 pounds. So
Yeah, he's hard to miss, believe
yeah,
me.
sometimes I'm carrying Joe around and sometimes I'm not. So
Yeah, I'll be at the DX dinner. I try to do the contest dinner and the DX dinner. And my wife comes with me about half the time. And so this is, I think, a year she's coming with me, and she enjoys the dinner. So
okay.
yeah, we'll be.
Now, do you also have a couple of grandkids that are licensed?
Yes. My 2 grandsons are licensed, and the youngest one got his general when he was 9.
Wow.
The oldest one was 11, I think. And he was a smart kid. They both studied online and took these practice tests. And the older one was always make mid 80s, low 90s. We were pretty confident about him. But the youngest one, whose nickname is Boogie, by the way, he's been called that. He's been called that since he was a kid. Boogie is now 6'4". You know, he's
Really?
yeah. And so he was 9. And so Reed, the older one, comes out of the testing session, and, well, how'd you do? Well, I passed. I made 88. And Boogie, he wasn't coming. We're all getting worried. He comes around the corner with a big grin on his face, and we said, how'd you do? He said, I missed the maximum. He missed the maximum number to still pass. That's what it was.
Wow, and are they a bit active still, or?
You know, yes and no. I've taken on some sodas, and they do enjoy that. Now they do sideband when we do that, but the youngest one just graduated from Texas Tech, and is getting ready to go to vet school in a year, and he wanted to talk to us on 40 meters. So he and his fiance went to my place in Santa Fe, where I have a little station set up. And so I talked him through getting it on the air from up there. So we had a round table with my son and I on 40 meters a few weeks back.
That's
and
cool.
he's been bugging me. He calls me Papa. He said, Papa, I need to get a radio in my truck. You think you can help me? I said, yeah, I think I can. So I think he's about to get active from a practical perspective. He likes talking back home. But I also think he'll catch some sort of bug and get more involved.
That's great. And that makes you feel young too. You keep them going and keep them involved, and yeah.
Keep the hobby going.
Yep.
Yes, I mean it. The odd thing about my son and I getting our license the same day, and he probably wouldn't appreciate me telling you this, but we were both new hams at the same time. He was 12, so so we had to solder PL 259s and learn how to cut dipoles and tune them and do all that. Well, he was kind of small. He didn't fully understand all that, especially the solder and stuff. So I did it all. I mean, because I was learning too, and so he really just was a operator. I would keep the station up and do the maintenance and build antennas and whatever needed to be done. And so now, as a older ham, he doesn't have those skills. he really can't solder. So I'm gonna have to go teach him. I guess he can sew you up.
Does he know, Mike? Does he know to pull the trigger back?
Well, I think he has that part. But yeah, he can sew you up, or he can treat your burn if you have a solder burn. But melting the solder, he's not so good at.
Well, yeah, we all have different skills. So, well, Mike, is very enjoyable, and I appreciate your time. And like I said, when you get back, I'm looking at the calendar. I'm thinking May or June, maybe after Hamfest, I'll drop you a note. And if we can circle back around, and I think at that point, maybe we'll be interested in how Robinson Crusoe turned out. But I really want to hear about summits at that point. So we may just change that topic a little bit.
Yeah,
I'd be happy to do it anytime, guys.
yeah. Well,
right,
Mike,
well,
thanks for coming, and have a very safe and enjoyable trip.
Yeah, I really
Thank
hope
you.
you do. And people that are out there, they're listening. If you got a few extra bucks, go to that donate page. I'll put it in the show notes. But I know every little bit helps, and we're going to do what we can do. And boy, I sure hope you have a safe and enjoyable trip.
Thank you, guys. Y'all be safe. Stay warm.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.
Enjoyed that. I know the timing on this episode was a little bit odd, as by the time we recorded it and we were able to get it dropped, the DXpedition is almost over. But hey, we did the best we could, and I really appreciate Mike taking his time to get on with us. And of course, I'd like to thank Joe, WAGEX, as well. I would love to have your feedback, answer your questions, and provide help with any DX or amateur radio issues that you may have. If you need clarification on something, or you just have a question, email me at thedxmentor@gmail.com. You can also follow me on Twitter at thedxmentor. Drop me a line if you've achieved an all-time new one, received recognition, or have a DX event that you would like us to mention. We'd be happy to do that. If you are enjoying the DX Mentor channel, please hit the subscribe button. You can also click like if you found this one to be particularly interesting. If you don't want to subscribe, please drop me a note and let me know why, and let me know if I can change something. 7-3 for this episode, and thanks to my XYL Karen for her love and support.